Hi, I'm Greg Bassett. Welcome to another edition of One-on-One. I'm from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and today we have Beth Ohlsson from the Salisbury Substance Abuse Community Center. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you for having me.
So, Beth, there's so much attention on the heroin issue in our community. People talk about it all the time. Tell us what your institution's role is there and what goes on in this community with the problem that we have.
Wow, that was all one question, right?
However you want to do it.
Okay. The SAC Center, as we affectionately call ourselves, provides a building. We're a nonprofit corporation that provides a building where 12-step groups can meet. That includes Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, we have Chemical Dependence Anonymous, we have Al-Anon and Nar-Anon, which are for the families and friends of the alcoholic or addict. We have Gamblers Anonymous, and we have Emotions Anonymous. We have 39 meetings a week.
So treatment doesn't actually happen there, but people come there to deal with their issues.
Yes, and people come to a 12-step meeting to learn how to live.
Right.
Treatment is an event. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And unfortunately, lots of treatment agencies talk about graduating from treatment, and there's a mindset to graduating that says I'm done, I'm finished, I'm well, and that simply isn't so. Recovery is a lifestyle, and learning to live without benefit of drugs or alcohol in our society is a big deal. It's a very big deal.
Right.
We're out of step. We live in a drinking world.
Right.
And there are quite a few people who use marijuana and other things recreationally and have perfectly decent lives. But there are those who are addicted who can't do that. And so how do you get through the death of a parent? How do you get through the death of a spouse? How do you celebrate that promotion? How do you do New Year's Eve without a drink or a drug? How do you do that? And that's what the 12-step Design for Living provides. And the way that the 12-step fellowships work is a newcomer finds somebody who's been around for a while, and that person's called a sponsor, and the sponsor takes the newcomer through the 12 steps. This is how you do this. This is how you live one day at a time using these principles and these actions so that you don't feel the need to get drunk, get high, whatever.
Right.
Take the edge off. And those relationships are very special. Very special. And that's how it works. You know, people keep coming to meetings to give back. People will often say things like, don't you ever stop going to those meetings? Why do you still need those?
Right.
And the response is, did you outgrow your need for church?
Right. Right.
You know, church teaches people how to live. Well, so do 12-step fellowships.
Well, all addictions are debilitating, but is there some way to level the addictions? Like, you know, is a gambling addiction not as bad as a heroin addiction, or it's all bad?
It's all bad.
Yeah.
Addiction is whatever it is, whether it's the substance or the behavior, interferes with your life.
Because people say, well, I only drink beer. You know, I can't get in much trouble drinking beer. I don't drink mixed drinks, so I don't have a problem.
Want to bet?
Yeah.
Want to bet? I recently was at a training, and Kirk Schmoke did the keynote address.
Former mayor of Baltimore.
Right, and currently the dean of the law school at Howard University. And he was talking about the addiction problem in Maryland prisons. And if you look at the violent offenses and the drug that the criminal was on, 9 times out of 10 it's alcohol.
Right.
Because people get violent on alcohol.
Right.
People don't get violent on heroin. They nod out. They go to sleep.
Right.
People don't get violent when they gamble. But if you've just gambled away all of the family's money, that's every bit as bad as beating somebody.
Right.
Okay, so anything that interferes with your life and your success and your relationships is a problem. What is insidious about addiction is you don't know that you've crossed that line until after you've crossed it.
Right.
And you can have a significant drinking or drug problem and still go to work every day because the consequences are invisible. You feel rotten inside, you lose your self-respect, you lose your values, standards, and morals, and you do all these things you would never do. But as long as you haven't been caught, it's easy to say, I'm not that bad.
Right.
I'm not that bad. Get a DWI, get picked up for shoplifting because you need some extra money, domestic violence, all of those things, all of those legal consequences tend to make people look at their drinking or drugging. But you can go a long time before that happens.
Do the 12-step programs work?
Yes.
What's the key to making them work?
You have to want to be sober more than you want to be drunk. You have to be willing to take directions and do it somebody else's way. You have to be pretty miserable. In the rooms, people talk about hitting a bottom. It could be an emotional bottom, a legal bottom, a financial bottom, a physical bottom. You go to the doctor and they tell you you have late-stage pancreatitis. That might make you look at your drinking.
Right.
You know, what makes somebody hit bottom? I don't know. I wish I did.
Right.
But there's some sort of crisis that happens almost always.
Well, I've had people tell me that they thought they were at bottom, but they weren't. There was still farther to go before they really hit bottom.
Absolutely. No matter how far you think you've gone, it can always get worse.
Yeah.
It can always get worse. And part of the benefit of going to a 12-step meeting is you get to see people whose bottom was much worse than yours.
Right.
And you can go, okay, so if I decide I want to do this again, I'm going to go there.
Right.
And you can say, I don't think so.
Now, I've heard that too, that people will go to a meeting and they think they have a problem, but then they see people who have real problems, and then they say, well, I don't really have a problem. I'm not like that guy.
Yes, that happens, unfortunately. What I would say to someone is listen to identify in, not out. And when people talk in the language of feelings instead of events, you'll find that it's all the same.
Right.
You know, they feel lonely. People with an addiction feel like their skin doesn't fit. They're just uncomfortable. They can't be around people without something to fortify them and give them some courage. Their relationships have gone down the tube. Work isn't really very good anymore. May not have been fired, but work's not going so well.
Right.
You know, the kids are acting out. Kids are a great gauge of how mom and dad are doing. When kids start acting out in school and stuff, oftentimes it's because something's wrong at home.
Right.
And people don't want to look.
Or they shut down.
Or they shut down.
Yeah.
Absolutely. People don't want to look. Addiction is a very shameful thing. And no matter how enlightened we think we are, we're not. We're not. We're just not.
What's unique about our community when it comes to addiction? Is there anything unique?
No.
It's the same
Sorry.
everywhere? No, it's fine. I don't want to be unique.
My perception, and it is my perception,
Right.
is that we appear to have a higher incidence of it because we are a resort town.
Right.
You know, and so the hospitality industry is loaded with people who use and abuse substances, and there isn't a lot going on from October to April. So what do you do with all that time?
Right.
You know, so I think that's what contributes to at least it appearing to be more prominent. But the standard nationally is 10%.
10%.
10%. 1 out of 10 is addicted to a substance or behavior.
Right.
And it is an equal opportunity destroyer. It doesn't matter whether you're a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, an India chief, daycare mom, stay-at-home mom, doesn't matter.
Right.
It's an equal opportunity destroyer.
Now, with all the attention on heroin here lately, the face of heroin, the face of the heroin user is changing. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. I was listening to NPR while I was getting dressed this morning, and they did a piece, and what they said was that historically, heroin has been thought of as a problem limited to people of color and predominantly men, and that's changing. The face of the heroin addict is becoming more and more women and more white women that you would never expect
Right.
to get caught. Heroin is really it's a seductive thing, and as a matter of fact, here's some trivia for you. Heroin was created by the U.S. Army to wean their soldiers off of morphine. So it was created with good intention.
Right.
But that's not the way it turned out. It's highly addictive. And somewhere along the line, this culture decided that pain was fatal. And if you don't believe me, go have some surgery. And
right.
every 5 minutes, somebody's in your room going, how's your pain, how's your pain, how's your pain?
You can't push the button enough.
And it will lock you out, but you can push it a whole lot.
Yeah.
Pain's not fatal, but as a culture, we don't do pain. It's on the don't do list.
Right.
And so that makes things very difficult. And to tell a doctor, no, I don't want pain medication, it's like, excuse me? But yeah, pain's not fatal, and we need to think about what the body's capable of doing without assistance.
Right.
The body can heal. What will happen? Well, you'll go to sleep a lot. You'll kind of pass out a lot because it hurts, but
right.
that's okay. That's okay.
Right.
And what happens, especially with pain clinics, is they start using opiates because they're effective for people with chronic pain. And something happens, and they no longer write the prescription, or the patient has not been compliant with their protocol, or for whatever, but they still have the pain. And so they go, what do I do now? Well, to buy a Perk 30 on the street is $25 to $35. A bag of heroin is $7. And
right.
then it becomes a case of economics. The last job I had before this one, I worked as a counselor at the Center for Clean Start, which is a treatment agency for pregnant and postpartum women. And the drug of choice changed. In the 8 years I was there, it changed. When I got there, it was crack cocaine, and when I left, it was heroin. It was predominantly heroin. Rarely would you see someone who was just an alcoholic, who just used cocaine. They were almost all opiate addicts. So it is changing. And it's scary. It's very scary.
But what about this idea about marijuana, decriminalization of marijuana, the gateway drug stuff? Is that, weigh in on that for me, because I'm not sure I understand it all. Just based on what you see, I guess.
Yeah. There are those people who graduate from drug to drug to drug. Many of them start with marijuana because it's actually easier for a younger person to get marijuana than it is alcohol. And they will start with that, with marijuana, perhaps go to alcohol, try some powder cocaine, try some LSD, try some heroin, and they will find the drug that works for them, that makes them escape whatever it is they're escaping.
Right.
So there's that. So yeah, is it a gateway drug? Absolutely. Is it for everybody? No. I know people who have smoked pot their whole lives, and they're successful people, and they have a couple of joints on the weekend, the way some people drink on the weekends, and they go about their life and they're fine.
Right.
But you can get very addicted to marijuana, and the marijuana that is available now is incredibly potent, and it's laced with God only knows what.
Right.
And that's really the danger of black market drugs, because you don't know what's in them. You really don't know what's in them.
Right. I can't imagine just not knowing and taking something you have no idea what it is.
There's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous: the man takes a drink, the drink takes the drink, and then the drink takes the man.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. By the time the drink takes the man, there isn't anything else. Logic no longer works.
Right.
Because there's a physical dependence, so the drug becomes necessary to simply feel normal. And when you talk to a heroin addict, at the end of their addiction, they're not getting high, they're just staying well. Heroin, opiates are pain medications. So if you're on a pain medication all the time, there's a zero pain tolerance.
Right.
Zero. I can't even wrap my head around that. I don't know what that looks like. But I gave up trying to understand it. I just have to get that that's true for who's ever in that position. And what is it like to go through life knowing that if I bump my elbow, it's going to feel like somebody broke it?
Right.
And how do you wean someone away from that?
Interesting.
So there's a physical dependence there that makes it even more complicated than simply giving up the drug.
Right.
Because the body demands it. The body just demands it to feel normal. That's really bad.
Right. Now, the people who come in and run these programs, who are they?
Who runs a 12-step meeting?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, is it...
Alcoholics, addicts, people in recovery.
Are they people that you recruit, or are they're using your building, basically?
It's self-selecting.
Gotcha.
Okay? Anybody can start a meeting.
Right.
Anybody. I can't, because the SAC Center is not a 12-step fellowship.
Okay.
Okay? But if you were a member of Gamblers Anonymous, say, and the closest meeting was in Wilmington, and you said, no, wait a minute, we have to have a...
Right.
Okay. What you would do is you would come in to the SAC Center, you would fill out a piece of paper, you would contact the national headquarters for Gamblers Anonymous. They would put you on their international roster so people could find you on the internet, and you would get the books and the papers, and you would get a time slot, and you would start your meetings. It really is a grassroots organization. Every group has the right to run itself the way it sees fit. The groups are governed by a set of 12 traditions that are for the groups.
Right.
The 12 steps are for the individuals.
Right.
And they are the people in the meetings are the people who need the meetings, want the meetings, want to give back.
Right.
But no, we don't recruit anybody. Now, we do have, there are people who send us participants for the meetings. Often treatment agencies will say, go to 3 meetings this week, or go to a meeting every day, or go to 1 meeting a week. The drug court participants.
So the judge could order that?
Yeah, the judge could order that.
Right.
Drug court participants are required to go to so many 12-step meetings in a week, a month, whatever. Probation, the drunk driver monitor program, all of those require people to come to meetings. Do they have to come to the SAC Center? No. There are meetings other places. Sure. But yeah, you can be court ordered or treatment ordered or ordered by Department of Social Services to become part of a 12-step group.
Are there stories where people come in as hostages, basically, because they're forced there, and then maybe they resist, but then they get it?
Yes.
Anyone you can tell me about, or? Without naming anyone, obviously.
Yeah. I can't name anybody, but I'm thinking, there are so many people that I know.
Right.
Who will sit in a meeting and say, I had no desire to be here. And one day something clicked, and I actually wanted to come to the meeting.
Yeah.
There's a man that I know. He has been sober 6 or 7 years, and he said, the judge ordered me here, and I didn't want to come, and I was a bad drunk. And then social services took my kids away. And I was still a bad drunk. But I knew if it was going to cost me my kids, I had to do something. So I came to these damn meetings. That was 6 years ago.
Wow.
I'm still sober, and there are my kids.
Right.
And he sat down.
Yeah.
What human beings can do is amazing. And what the 12-step groups provide people like this man is the support and the encouragement and the cheerleading to don't give up.
Right.
And when this man goes out in the world, nobody's going to say, you can do this. But when you really try to change who you are, the world's waiting for you.
Right.
How long is it going to be before you mess up again?
Right.
But when you're in a 12-step meeting, you get all the attaboys, and you get medallions, or you get key tags, or you get applause, or you get hugs, or all those things that we normally would want to get from our family. But by the time somebody gets to a 12-step meeting, their family's done.
Right.
They're just done.
They've given up on them.
Yeah. And they don't want to be hurt anymore.
Yeah.
In all fairness, they can't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
But recovery works. Does it work for everybody? No. Because not everybody wants it.
But eventually either has to or they're going to die.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Addiction kills more people than it doesn't.
Right.
And when you hit that bottom we talked about earlier, you go to jail, you get locked in an institution, you die, or you get better. And it really does kill more people than it doesn't.
Yeah.
So those people who recover and return to society as successful, productive individuals, they really are heroes. And it would make my day if we could start treating them that way.
Yeah. We had Lieutenant Robinson here from the Sheriff's Office last week,
Mm-hmm.
and his perspective is different than a lot of people's perspective. But I've always thought that, with drug issues, it's better to get these people counseling and help. And his attitude is, no, put them in jail because it forces that process on them. Yeah.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
That gets their attention in a
it
way.
does
Yeah.
for a lot of people, it gets their attention.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I never thought I'd find myself here. I need to look at
That could be bottom.
that could be bottom.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I actually teach a class at the jail, and we assume for the purpose of the class that being in jail is hitting bottom.
Right.
It may not be. It may get worse. I don't think we can arrest our way out of this one.
Right.
I really don't. The services that are provided to our inmates are limited at best, and that's partially because detention centers don't have them
Right.
for a long time. They might have them 90 days, maybe. So you can't do a lot in 90 days. But the services are very limited, and just putting somebody in jail will force them to be clean and sober, but it doesn't do anything for this.
Right.
And the addiction lives here as much as it does in the body. So, the dealer, yeah, lock him up for a long time, please. The John,
Right.
lock him up for a long time, please.
Right.
Nonviolent offenders really need some counseling, and they need support. I think where we fall short as a community and as a society is we think when people go to treatment, they're done, sort of like surgery.
Right.
We remove that addiction, now you're fine.
Right.
No. Then when you're in treatment, you have all these services wrapped around you and all the support and all the attaboys and attagirls you could ever want. And you finish treatment and it's all gone.
Right. I do get the feeling too, the idea that you can't do it by yourself, that
You
there is
really can't.
a camaraderie thing that goes on there. When I go by your center, I see people outside during breaks talking, and they seem to be talking a lot. And actually one of the open secrets in our community is the methadone clinic that is over on Carroll Street by the hospital. It's in the hospital, it's a county facility. But you see people there socializing under that tree by the old Daily Times building and around that entranceway. And they're not just standing out there smoking and stuff, they're actually helping each other. You can get a feeling of what's going on there. It's amazing that they're reaching out to other people like themselves.
Peer pressure is a wonderful thing when it's positive.
Right.
We always talk about peer pressure as a negative, but in the recovery community, it's a positive. Somebody goes out after 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years, there's a lot of people who get disappointed, they get scared, they're hurt, they might be heartbroken.
Right.
In the recovery community, the peer pressure is very, very positive. You see people lose a grandchild and not get drunk. You see people pay back $20,000 they owed to the IRS. You have wonderful role models. Everybody? No.
Right.
Is everybody in your church a good role model? No. Don't be ridiculous.
Right.
So don't impose that standard on a 12-step fellowship. They're human beings. But the peer pressure can be a very, very positive thing, and what happens over time is you weave a network of support that cradles you through tough stuff.
Right. And people, when they do fall off the wagon, how do they get back on? Do you have to go back to the beginning, or do you get back on where you fell off? Or how does that work?
I've never had anybody ask that.
I can ask some dumb ones. I really can.
It's not dumb. It's not dumb. Coming back after a relapse really takes courage.
Yeah.
Or it takes real absolute defeat, humiliation, humbling, and all of that. When people go back out, it's very sad. It's very sad.
And it must be certainly hard for yourself, because you think you've made so much, like dieting. I'll make great progress and then all of a sudden binge eat. So I'm sure, is it similar maybe with drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, yeah.
Like you think I'll never be fat again, and next thing you know, you're on your third pint of Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah, well, and that's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
After a period of time, you can think you're safe.
Yeah.
I can have just one. And unfortunately, when the relapse happens, if it really takes hold, you end up right back where you started in terms of the quantity and the consequences and the ramifications and all of that. When people manage to come back into the rooms, it's because someone in the fellowship went and got them and brought them back. It's because they reached deep down to the bottom of their soul and said, I can't do this again, and they come back. They might have gotten in legal trouble and the judge sends them back, but we're always grateful to see somebody come back, because the alternative is dying.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who thinks they might have a problem? What advice can you give them?
I would say, go to a meeting. If you think your problem is alcohol, go to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you think your problem is drugs, go to Narcotics Anonymous or Chemical Dependence Anonymous, and listen for how you are the same, not different. Really tough to go in a three-piece suit and identify with somebody who's in jeans and cutoffs and chains and all of that. Don't look at them, listen to them. Listen to the message, not the messenger. Go to a half a dozen meetings, a half a dozen open meetings, and make up your mind.
And it really is anonymous.
It really is anonymous. I can do whatever I want with my anonymity. Hands off on yours.
Right.
Hands off. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that in the early days, it was very shameful, and people felt like they had to really hide the fact that they had a problem. I hoped we're a little better than that, but it also protects the fellowship. If I go around going, hey, I'm an AA and I'm sober and I'm wonderful, and 2 days later I'm drunk,
right,
people will say AA doesn't work, see?
Right.
So it also protects the fellowship, not just the individual. But no, there's no paper trail. We don't keep attendance. We don't keep records. If someone has a court slip to sign, it gets signed. We don't have a checkoff list. All 8 court slips showed up today. No, we don't do that. There's no paper trail. None. If you walk into our building and say, is Beth Ohlsson here? I'm saying, I'm sorry, I don't know. Sorry.
What's your website? What's it?
The website?
Yeah.
ssacc.org.
Okay.
It has a picture of our beautiful building that looks like a brown paper bag. Looks like a sack.
It's the old McCrory's building.
Looks like a sack.
Yeah.
It has the directions. It has a full meeting schedule on it that we keep up to date. And anyone can go to any meeting that is an open meeting, and on the schedule it has a nice O in the last corner, in the last column, so that you can come and see.
Excellent. Beth Ohlsson from the SAC Center right here in Central Salisbury, talking about people with their dependencies and what help is available to get people through this. Thank you so much, Beth. I appreciate you coming in. Greg Bassett from Salisbury Independent with another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.